It began without warning. A quiet morning, a ship drifting into the harbor of Messina, Sicily, in the autumn of 1347. Sailors leaning over the rails, waving to the townspeople gathering along the docks. It looked like any other merchant ship returning from the rich ports of the east. But as it approached, people noticed something was wrong. The sailors were not waving, they were collapsing. Some were dead already. Some were screaming for help. Some had black swellings on their necks and armpits, oozing blood. The ship was not carrying treasure, it was carrying death. Within hours, authorities demanded the vessel leave the port, but it was too late. The rats had already fled down the ropes. Their fleas had bitten the dock workers, and a disease that Europe had no name for had found its first victims. This was not just a sickness, it was the beginning of the worst biological catastrophe in human history. A plague that would erase half of Europe. A plague so monstrous that survivors thought the end of the world had arrived. A plague that made even God seem silent. The Black Death had begun. In the months that followed, messengers galloped across the countryside with breathless warnings, villages vanishing overnight, monasteries collapsing as every monk inside died by sunrise, trade routes going silent. No one could understand how it spread, no one could explain why entire families died within days while the house next to them remained untouched, only to fall the following week. Europe had no germ theory, no antibiotics, no understanding of bacteria or fleas or rats. People believed it was punishment for sin, or bad air rising from the earth, or the work of strangers and outsiders. Fear didn't travel, it exploded. By winter, the plague reached France. Paris lost half its population. Doctors wore long leather coats, beaked masks stuffed with herbs, and carried sticks so they wouldn't have to touch the dying directly. They believed the sweet smell of lavender or mint would protect them. It did nothing. In Germany, bells rang constantly, so constantly that chroniclers wrote the sound felt like the heartbeat of death echoing through the streets. In England, entire towns vanished from the map. Chroniclers wrote that corpses lay in the roads like fallen leaves. Fields went untilled. Grain rotted in barns. Animals wandered through empty villages, confused, ownerless. The world was breaking. And yet, even in the worst moments of human suffering, stories of courage flickered like tiny lights in a great darkness. In Florence, a doctor named Guy de Chauliac refused to flee. He remained at his post, tending to patient after patient, even as most healers abandoned the city. He caught the plague, survived, and wrote one of the only first-hand accounts that still survives. In London, a 14-year-old boy kept a secret diary. His entries stop abruptly halfway through the year. Historians found the notebook centuries later in the wall of a ruined home. The boy's final words, "The death carts have returned. They are calling again." In Avignon, the Pope ordered massive bonfires around the papal palace, believing heat would purify the air. He survived, but almost everyone around him died. The plague did not simply kill, it unmade the world. Old beliefs collapsed. Governments fell apart. Economies ended in a single season. The social order shattered so completely that in some regions, children stopped respecting their parents and neighbors refused to help the sick, not because they were cruel, because they were terrified. Imagine witnessing a death so gruesome that you don't recognize your own family member's face. Imagine a fever so intense you beg for water, only to vomit blood moments later. Imagine swellings the size of eggs forming under your skin, turning black as they filled with pus until your body felt like a furnace. For most victims, death came within 48 hours.
In rural areas, survivors buried their loved ones in shallow pits. In cities, the dead were piled into wagons and dumped into mass graves, tens of thousands at a time. Chroniclers wrote that when the wind blew across the cemeteries, the air smelled of decay for miles. But the real horror, Europe didn't know the worst was yet to come. In 1349, the plague mutated. It entered the lungs. Now it wasn't spread by fleas, it was spread by breath. One cough, one conversation, one shared room, and entire families fell sick within hours. People panicked. They barricaded their doors. They abandoned the sick. Funeral rites collapsed. Faith collapsed. A priest wrote, "We whispered our prayers, for to speak aloud was to breathe death." Yet even in this unimaginable darkness, the world changed in ways no one expected. The plague left fields abandoned and farms empty. Labor became scarce. Wages doubled. Peasants realized they had power they never had before. The Middle Ages ended, not with a sword, but with a microbe. The Black Death reshaped the world so violently that historians say it made the Renaissance possible. Ironically, destruction became the seed of rebirth. But for the people living through it, none of that mattered. All they saw was the end. The plague lasted 4 years, but its shadow endured far longer. By the time it faded, an estimated 75 million people were dead. No war, no famine, no disaster in human history comes close. Europe was a different continent now, emptier, quieter, and painfully aware of how fragile civilization truly is. And yet, there is something haunting in the silence that followed. A reminder that even the strongest empires can be humbled, even the greatest cities can be emptied, even the most powerful cultures can be brought to their knees by something too small to see. The plague did not just kill people, it killed certainty. It killed the belief that humanity was untouchable. It killed the optimism of the medieval world. But in the ruins, something else grew: understanding. Medicine changed. Sanitation improved. Quarantine was invented. Science gained ground over superstition. The Black Death was the darkest chapter in human history. But like all darkness, it revealed what had been hidden: the cruelty of nature, the fragility of civilization, the courage of ordinary people, the resilience of those who survived. And when the final wave faded, Europe rose again, scarred, humbled, but alive. The plague did not end humanity. It reminded humanity to fight for life. And perhaps the most haunting truth is this: the Black Death was not a medieval monster, it was a biological event. And events can repeat. We live in a world far more connected, far more crowded, far more delicate than Europe in 1347. The question now is not whether another plague could come. The question is whether we would survive it better or worse.